Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So we're on text 7, right? So Canto 3, chapter 25, text 7, the glories of devotional service. Devatur Devahatur Vacha Nirvina Nitaram Bhuman Asat Indriya Darsanat Yena Sambhavyamanena Prapanandaham Tamaha Prabhu Devahutirvacha Nirnina Nitaram Bhuman Asad Indriya Tarsanat Yanir Sambhavya Yamanina Prapananaham Tama Prabhu Devahutirvacha Nirvina Nitaram Bhuman Asad Indriya Tarsanat Yena Sambhavya Manena Prapananham Tama Prabhu Devahutirvacha Nirvina Nitaram Bhuman Asad Indriya Tarsanat Yena Sambhavya Manena Prapananham Tama Prabhu Jai Gaura Nitai Ki Jai Devahutirvacha Nirvinanitaram Bhuman.
Asad Indriya Tarshanat.
Asad Indriya Tarshanat. Yena Sambhavyamanena.
Anandam Tamak Prabhu.
Prapanandham Tamaprabho.
Devahutirvacha
Devahutirvacha
Nirvinanitaram bhuman
Nirvinanitaram Bhuman.
Asadindriya tarshanat
Asad Indriya Tarshanat.
Yena sambhavayamanena
Yena Sambhavyamanena.
Prapanandham tamaprabhu
Prapanandham Tamaprabho.
Devahutirvacha
Devahutirvacha
Nirvinanitaram bhuman
Nirvinanitaram Bhuman.
Asadindriya Darshanat
Asad Indriya Tarshanat.
Yena Sambhavyamanena
Yena Sambhavyamanena.
Prapanandam Tamaprabhu.
Prapanandham Tamaprabho. Yeah, pull that stuff out from the middle up at the top. From the middle, from the top. On the knot. Devahutirvacha Nirvinanitaram Bhuman. Asad Indriya Tarshanat. Yena Sambhavyamanena. Prapanandham Tamaprabho.
So now we'll go to online.
Uvacha Devahutirvacha
Devahutirvacha
Vidhanitaram Bhuman
Nirvinanitaram bhuman
Asad Indriya Tarshanat
Asadindriya tarshanat
Yena Sambhavyamanena
Yena Sambhavyamanena.
Prapanandam Tamaprabho.
Prapanandham tamaprabhu
देवहूतिर उवाच
Devahutirvacha
नितराम्
Nirvinanitaram bhuman
असत् इन्द्रियाकर्षणात्
Asadindriya tarshanat
येन सम्भाव्यमानेन
Yena Sambhavyamanena.
प्रपन्नाद्भं प्रभो
Prapanandham tamaprabhu
Devahutirvacha
Devahutirvacha
Nirvinanitaram Bhuman
Nirvinanitaram bhuman
Asad Indriya Tarshanat
Asadindriya tarshanat
Yena Sambhavyamanena
Yena Sambhavyamanena.
Prapanandam Tamaprabho.
Prapanandham tamaprabhu
Devahutirvacha
Devahutirvacha
Nirvinnanitaram bhuman
Nirvinanitaram bhuman
Asad Indriya Darshanat
Asadindriya tarshanat
Yena Sambhavyamanena
Yena sambhavyamanena
Prapanandam tamah Prabhu.
Prapanadam tamaprabhu.
Okay, ready.
Okay, everyone chant, so we'll chant one by one. Devahuti Vacha. Devahuti said, Nirvina, disgusted, Nitaram, very, Bhuman, O my Lord, Asat, impermanent, Indriya, of the senses, Tarshanat, from agitation, Yena, by which, Sambhavyamanena, being prevalent, Prapana, I have fallen, Antam Tama, into the abyss of ignorance. Prabhu, O my Lord. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Devahuti said, I am very sick of the disturbance caused by my material senses. For because of this sense disturbance, my Lord, I have fallen into the abyss of ignorance. Here the word asat, indriya, tarshanat is significant. Asat means impermanent, temporary, and indriya means senses. Thus, asat, indriya, tarshanat means from being agitated by the temporarily manifest senses of the material body. We are evolving through different statuses of material bodily existence, sometimes in a human body, sometimes in an animal body, and therefore the engagements of our material senses are also changing. Anything which changes is called temporary or asat. We should know that beyond these temporary senses are our permanent senses, which are now covered by the material body. The permanent senses, being contaminated by matter, are not acting properly. Devotional there's a lot of stuff. I was listening to the class this morning, and the speaker, he was saying that Prabhupada was mentioning this, and we have a tendency to kind of forget, is that devotional service is also yoga, right? So then he was talking about how Arjuna, he wanted to just leave the battlefield then. He's thinking at least no one will get hurt, no one will get killed, I won't have to kill my family members. I'll just give it all up and go to the forest and meditate. So what Krishna was doing, Krishna explained a whole bunch of processes of meditation, right? So basically you have to sit in a secluded place, with a seat, not too high, not too low, maybe tiger or deer skin. What did they do? They covered it with some cotton, or they covered it with something? Cotton? A soft cloth, yeah. And meditate on super soul and the heart for 10,000 years. But he was saying, Arjuna was saying, well, wait a minute here. Control the mind on all sides. It's totally impossible to try to control the mind. It's like to try to control the wind. And then he's saying, well, Krishna's telling him that it is possible, right? It is possible by constant practice and by detachment. And Prabhupada's saying the wind, it's a hurricane. So that's another thing too. So the senses become satiated. So Satrup Das Goswami, he was pointing out there was a child, his name was Kunjabi Hari. And he says, okay, so if I give Kunjabi Hari a rascal, would you like that? He goes, yeah, okay, sure, okay. How about another rascal? You like another rascal? Okay, sure. Okay, here's another one, right? How about if I give you 10 rascals and you eat them all right now? Would you want another one? And he says, so he goes, okay, see, now something happens here. what happens? You get satiated. A little, you've had enough. You'd have enough sugar, and all of a sudden the sugar, now the very same thing that you enjoyed, you're not enjoying it as much. You're like a satiated. You don't want anymore, right? Who knows when you're gonna want another one, right? So you become satiated. So sense becomes satiated. So then there's like, but if you kind of separate, the knowledge acquiring senses, the working senses. So there's like the knowledge acquiring senses. They're connected to the mind, and so all the experience is actually really processed within the mind. And the mind's process is accept and reject. And under certain circumstances, according to the intelligence, the mind is again accepting something that previously rejected under other circumstances. Right. So what they were talking about, there's something called the indriyas, right? The chit. There's the chitta, the cheta, the indriya. So there's the senses. And there's the perception of the senses. And then there's the perception of the senses within the mind. And there's the subtle sense objects, the perception of the sense objects within the mind. Even though subtly, not physically engaging with the specific sense objects, but subtly contemplating the specific sense objects. So there's taste, smell, sensation. Let's see, seeing. All right, so I don't know. So apparently, some people don't have very much visualization capabilities these days, especially the karmis. They don't have any memory. I don't know. I think they're trying to cover it up or something, avoiding the issues. Don't have any memory, don't have a clear perception. But when we come to devotional service, we kind of realized that we had like some sort of, well, first of all, we had to learn how to use our minds because they took our minds away. So we had to work with people and in a certain way to again learn how to learn again how to take your mind back and how to use your mind again, right? There's something kind of happened. It got turned off somewhere along the line. And then we realized like exactly how much contamination we actually had, how much polluted we actually are. Basically, it's not so much as being absorbed in the bodily concept of life, but what they're saying, what Satsrup Das Goswami said in this connection, he said, what is sinful is harming others for your sense gratification. So killing animals for your taste, for your sense buds. So they say it's not so much sinful and not so bad just to identify with the body, but because of the fact that you're identifying with the body, you're harming others, and that's extremely sinful. So basically, that's the bottom line. The bottom necessity is the ahankara. Good old identification, right? It's very seamlessly knotted and riveted to the eternal self. Ahankara, false identification with a false material body, the asat. So Prabhupada is saying, don't go for the asat, go for the sat. So we're sat chit ananda, the eternity knowledge of bliss. So go for what's eternal. Don't go for the limited temporary. So let's see what else. So they were discussing meditating on the form of the Lord. Kapila Deva is explaining this to his mother, Devahuti. Kardama Muni had just explained this. Brahma had already told her that Kardama Muni will be leaving home. He'll take renunciation, sannyas. Her 9 daughters will become married to suitable sages. It will lead them to their path of perfection. Right. And then, and so Devahuti would be relieved of the material infection from her son, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Kapila Dev, teaching the glories of devotional service and what's called metaphysics or Sankhya philosophy, and how to meditate on the Supreme Lord. So in the Satya Yuga, they're meditating on the Lord within the heart and Vishnu. In Kali Yuga, the prescribed process is Harinama, 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 Kevalam, Klornasteva, Nasteva, Steva, Gatyaranyata. But all the processes are all included in devotional service. We have descriptions. There's a lot of So they're starting with the lotus feet, and the Lord has these ruby colored toenails. They have a luster, and he has anklets. They're the jewels and the anklets and the gold and the silver and things. They're precious metals. Oh yeah, there's another detail. Is that there's on the back of the Kastuba jewel is engraved a swan. Yeah, on the back of the Kastuba jewel. So they're saying that the Lord's neck, right, is so soft. Basically, it's compared to many places as soft as a conch shell. You know, the inside of the conch shell, the inside of the world, right? The conch shell, just the soft, just the conch shell. It looks soft, right? So they're saying that the Lord's lotus neck, beautifies the Kastuba jewel. And the Kastuba jewel is so rare that we don't even perceive of it in this world. It's a very, very rare, precious metal, beyond precious, beyond. Right. Then they're saying that you meditate on like each of the limbs of the form of the Lord until finally you come to a smiling face. And then it's mentioned that you just give up all the other conceptions and just meditate on a smiling face. You know, Paramatma. So as Narada Muni instructed Dhruva Maharaj to meditate on Super Soul in the heart and chant Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And then Narayana Kavacha, there's a description there of how to meditate on the Super Soul in the heart. There's a lot of places. There's things that are illustrated how Gajendra, he was an elephant in the heavenly planets. He fought for 100 years in the time frame of the demigods against an alligator. Now, the alligator is more stronger in the water because that's his habitat. But the elephant is not as strong in the water as he would be on land because the water is not his natural habitat. The land is. So he fought with the alligator. And so finally, Gajendra, he saw he was losing the battle and he was probably going to be killed. He was probably going to be vanquished. So somehow or other, he remembered in his previous life a prayer that he chanted to the Supreme Lord. And he held up a lotus flower with his trunk, and somehow or other he articulated. You know, generally they're saying the animals, they don't articulate with their mouth for speech, but somehow or other, Gajendra, he did it. He recited this prayer that he remembered from his previous life, and the Supreme Lord came and saved him and killed the crocodile. So this is illustrated. Basically, the yogis can actually take many, many lifetimes of studying the Vedas and practicing meditation and meditating on the Super Soul before one comes to understand, or by the mercy of a devotee, engage in devotional service, and then eventually, finally, go back home, back to Godhead. Oh yeah, that was another thing they were talking about too, because I remember you were asking me about the different forms of the Lord, And if someone would actually become devoted or actually go to that specific loka, that form of the Lord. So they were saying that Prabhupada was actually saying this, that the devotee may have a specific affinity for a specific incarnation or specific form of the Lord. And that in its constitutional position actually return to that specific capacity. So that was a nice confirmation. Listen to that. See, maybe I could jog my mind and maybe try to remember something, because I was trying to remember stuff that I wanted to speak on the class because it was relevant. But does anybody have any comments or questions, subject for discussion? I kind of jog my mind or kind of think about that. I just like to make a comment. Or do you have a question?
I was wondering if you could talk about becoming. Devahuti is expressing, she says, I am very sick of the disturbance caused by my material senses. So is it sounds like she has some emotions here. So would you be able to talk how this is?
Yeah, what they were talking about, like she was engaged in household affairs, and Devahuti was praying that she was just simply absorbed in false identification with the body, engaged in like family and society, due to ignorance. Actually, she was serving a great yogi, a great devotee. But they enjoyed all throughout the universe in Karna Muni's mystic aerial palace. And so when somebody's enjoying through the senses and just absorbed in bodily identification and forgetting the prime necessity of life, then that's tamaguna, or ignorance, or forgetfulness. So now she's coming to her senses. So of course she's emotionally disturbed. Her husband's leaving for sannyas. She's marrying her 9 daughters to some great sages. Now she wants to Jai Gora Nitai Ki Jai. So now, exactly as prophesied by Karna Muni and Brahma, is that her son Kapila will give her the instructions how to become relieved from the a spiritual realization. Meditate on the Lord in the heart, engage in devotional service. So basically, all these. There was the verse. I mentioned this yesterday. Pushpam Phalam Toyam. It's also in the 10th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. I think it was like, I think it was like, I'd have to look up those chapters. I think it was chapter 18, text 40 or something like that. It was Pushpam Phalam Toyam, Ticha, verse, word by word, verse by verse. It's in there. I looked it up because they would mention that in class. So one offers everything to the Supreme Lord. Basically, pure devotee or Krishna consciousness means to desire for the Supreme Lord and the Supreme Lord service rather than to desire the same thing for ourselves. Right? So we utilize different things. We had tape players, cassette players, with a PA sound system. Got a new microphone here, right? So actually, it's kind of useless to have one of these things for myself unless I had some sort of use for it, right? So this is a perfect use for it, engaging in Krishna service. As Prabhupada, he mentioned many times the mechanical workings of the dictaphone and the microphone. Oh yeah, and he would say how it's Krishna's energy. So this is what they said, is that the material energy is Krishna's energy, but we just don't know how to use it for Krishna's service, right? And according to false ego ahankara, somehow or other we assume that it's for our service, for our enjoyment. And so that's when it becomes a sinful activity and contaminated material consciousness. So this is a natural inclination for Devahuti. In many places in Srimad Bhagavatam, they say, oh, we're just simple women. We're not scientists. We're not sages. We're not Vedantists. Although the gopis are the highest Vedantists, right? But they say, oh, we're just like simple women. How can we understand the intricacies of yoga? That even the great mystic yogis who meditate for 10,000 years can hardly even grasp these concepts, right? So how it is it that that we could be relieved from the material infection, the contamination, and to become purified and to go back home, back to Godhead. So that was the whole idea about compiling the Srimad Bhagavatam. First of all, Narada Muni had instructed Vyasadeva that he was feeling dissatisfaction or not complete satisfaction because he didn't explain devotional service in the Vedanta Sutras. So he asked, he was instructed to compile Srimad Bhagavatam. And so Srimad Bhagavatam specifically meant for the Sudras, the women, the lower castes, although it's actually really meant for the Paramahamsas, the swan-like persons who are already self-realized, who are coming to devotional service and begin the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So the means and the method are exactly the same. In order to achieve the purification and the contamination of material consciousness, we chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And then the activity that is occurred by becoming purified by chanting Hare Krishna is chanting Hare Krishna. So it's engaging in devotional service with purified senses and chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in, also in a similar manner with purified senses in mind, through the mercy of the spiritual master, giving us the descriptions of Krishna, the descriptions of the spiritual self, and the analytical study in material nature, and engaging us in practical devotional service, because that's just it. We can meditate on the super soul, because how long do we do like a meditation session for? 15 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever the exercise was, an hour, half an hour, the whole late afternoon into the early evening hours. How about that one? Or after dinner, right? Right. So whatever our meditation sessions are, it doesn't compare to 10,000 years of meditation on Super Soul and the Heart. Right. So we can meditate on Super Soul if we can, without falling asleep and visualizing it and focusing on it. Right. Give it some color. Oh yeah, that was another thing I was saying. Alankar was telling me that Prabhupada said there was more colors and more sounds in the spiritual world. And what they were discussing was the verses that we chant in Brahma Samhita prayers every morning. Angani yasha sakalindriya vritti manti pashanti panti charam jaganti ananda chinmaya svadu vigrahasha govinda madi purusham tamam ajami. So that the Supreme Lord, he can perform any of the senses with any other senses. Right. So what they're saying is that in the spiritual world, we can actually hear music, see music and hear colors. Yeah. So whatever you can desire from the Kalpavriksha tree, but you don't desire it for yourself in the spiritual world from the Kalpavriksha tree. You desire it for your devotional service. Right. You can get all the milk you want from the Swarabhi cows, but that's for making curd and burfi and sandesh for the Supreme Lord, right? Because we're practicing with making these nice things and not desiring them for ourselves, right? And so that's the whole thing with the what all the women in Vrindavan are doing. They're all thinking about Krishna, and they're all making items for Krishna's breakfast in the morning. Radharani brings it over and cooks at Krishna's house with Mother Jasoda. And Mother Jasoda, she's planning and she's dressing Krishna, and all the gopis were all making necklaces and jewelry and flower garlands. And so it's not desiring for yourself, but it's for desiring for the Supreme Lord. So that's actually the devotional service, the change that actually takes place there. Yeah, so did that answer your question about Devahuti, how she's sick and tired of the senses? Basically, because it mentions this a lot of times in Srimad Bhagavatam. There's the Brahmana's lament. He was a miserly person. Although he was very wealthy, he didn't spend his money on anything, and he didn't even maintain his family well. And his family became disgusted and rejected him. So now he ended up penniless and ended up as a Brahmana sannyasi. And he was just lamenting that he should have just engaged in yoga and devotional service in the first place, instead of acting so miserly and working hard and amassing a great amount of wealth and not doing anything proper with it. So there's the Brahmana's lament. Yeah, it's called the Brahmana's lament. But many places they kind of wake up, came to their senses. Okay, so I met this person and I had this relationship with them for quite a long time, and I didn't notice that with each passing of each day and night of the sun and the moon rising and setting, I've simply wasted my life for the last 40 years, right? When I should have, so they kind of come to their senses. So it's mentioned this in many places in Srimad Bhagavatam, where a person, he prays and he laments that he's just simply wasted their life, or a good portion of it, many, many years, just engaged in forgetfulness of the Supreme Lord in so many different varieties and ways. Just being misers, being forgetfulness, being in tamaguna, like that, being engaged in family affairs. They're saying if you have your family, and so of course you have your family, so then you need some friends. But because you have family and friends, what comes automatically is some enemies, right? So in this way, we become entangled in the material world with what Srila Rupa Goswami calls society, friendship, and love. Yeah. Any other questions or comments, or maybe we just end class there then? Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam class ki jai.